Okay, I already filmed this one. Welcome to episode 20 of the Lochknits knitting podcast. My name is Haley. Today we are actually not talking about knitting at all. I participated in my first year of Tour de Fleece, so I have all of the yarn here with me that I spun. If you do not know what Tour de Fleece is, I've talked about it in like the last two or three episodes while we were all doing it as a group. It is just like a spinning initiative of sorts to spin yarn during the Tour de France. There are like official rules to it. My group of friends did not really participate in those rules. We just kind of spun from the start point to the end point. I'll talk a little bit about each one of the skeins that I spun. I have some before and after photos of what the fiber looked like before I prepped it or spun it or did anything to it. And then I also, of course, have the yarn itself here to show you. So any of the before and after pictures that I can put in as I'm talking about these yarns, I will definitely do that. If you've gotten this far into the video, you probably know what Tour de Fleece is. It seems to have gotten bigger in like the last couple of years, and my friends and I were all just in a position this year to finally sit down and do it. It felt like a level up this year as we were like kind of busting through our stash. We have a lot of fiber to use. Between the 5 of us, we've done some fiber exchanges. I plan on giving some of these skeins of yarn away to them as soon as they're talked about on the podcast, and then they'll be free to go to their respective homes. So it was fun to do, but also kind of necessary just to kind of burn through some of that stash that we have. This is future Haley putting this at the beginning of the video. As I'm talking about yardages for each of these, I'm talking about how many yards of yarn I brought into this world. So if I say that something is 300 yards, that means I spun 300 yards of yarn. And then however I plied that up, whether it's like a 2-ply or a chain ply, whatever, these are not the final numbers of the skeins. This is for the purpose of counting the Tour de Fleece yardage. So you're gonna see me hold up a really small skein of yarn and say a really big number. We'll talk about that at the end, but for the sake of just talking about Tour de Fleece and the numbers and everything and how much yardage you spun during the whole time, that's just a little quick explanation about that. I have a note on my phone of all of the yarn that I spun across Tour de Fleece. I have like sort of light descriptions of what every one is, mostly so I remember which skein is which. This very first skein, of course, I don't even have with me because I've already given it away. Only half of this skein that I'm about to talk about, and I'll put pictures on the screen. I think I'll be able to dig them up. Only half of this skein counted towards the Tour de Fleece total because I spun the first ply a few days before, and then I was looking for the second ply and I dug out this rose fiber that was like super special and very colorful and crazy and everything, and that portion I spun during Tour de Fleece. And that portion of this yarn that I'll put here on the screen was 406 yards of the rose fiber. So the rose fiber is the rainbow ply in this skein. That portion was 406 yards. The other ply with it was also 406 yards. I actually can't even remember now. It's been like 2 months what the other ply was. I think it was maybe, I don't know. I'm not even gonna guess. It's on the screen. The picture's there. The yarn actually has gone to live with my friend Megan. It is out of my stash and everything. I wanted to be sure to be able to count that one first ply. I felt like the first week of Tour de Fleece I was still kind of doing almost like a warm-up. I feel like I said we've all really leveled up on like the spinning game and everything, and where I started Tour de Fleece and where I ended were just two very different points. So that was my first skein. That was sort of a warm-up, and like I said, that went to go live with my friend Megan. When I was spinning it, Sock had said that it was giving like pastel Easter vibes, and I said I can't keep this. Megan has to have it, so it's off living with her now. My next spin is actually very exciting because this is my first designated, dedicated, whatever you want to say, sweater spin. So I didn't even know that the concept of a sweater spin existed. I was watching Casey of Young Folk Knits, and she had talked about spinning yarn for a sweater. She had separated the fiber differently for the sleeves. So if you think about the yarn that has to stretch across like the main circumference of your body versus the yarn that has to stretch across the circumference of your arm, obviously if you want to keep the striping or color changes consistent, you need much shorter repeats across the yarn that goes on your arms than on your body. So basically you split up and prep the yarn however you want to prepare it, and then do twice that amount of prep on each of the sleeves, if that makes sense. So let me show you what I have. I have the main body spin, I have 2 sleeve spins, and then all of my extras that I had left over, I actually spun into like a mini skein that I figured if I pick up for a neckline or something, I could just use it for that. This is the sweater spin. So this biggest tank, my tying is not very beautiful. This biggest tank is the actual body of the sweater. This was, I would say, my main spin. So this is a 2-ply. I'll talk about my 3-plying and chain plying journey as those hanks come up later in the video, but this is the main body of the yarn. This was melanated boho bay fiber. I got not this, was it this past year? I got this, I'm gonna say with confidence, at Cake Palooza at the Melanated Boho Bay and the Green Goat Ranch booth at Cake the day before Rhinebeck. So I've had this in my stash for coming up on a year, not quite. I'm gonna hold the actual yarn here in front of my face, and then I'll put the photos of what this fiber looked like before I started spinning it over here, because this quite honestly doesn't look anything like the fiber. This was such a strange experiment with color on this braid. I thought that this was gonna have like large flashes of color across the whole thing. The color that was across the braid on both braids, I had 2 separate braids, the exact same colorway. They were pretty indistinguishable. They could have even been from the same dye lot, but there were big splotches of like green and pink, and it was so wild how this all just kind of flowed together. I was worried at first that this was giving like muddy fiber blend, but I think it's fine. It came out nice. I've tried to look at it sort of like from a distance, like here. I don't know if this is like the most stellar color for me, so whether or not this is a sweater for me is kind of up in the air at this point. But I have the other 2 skeins, main one, and then these are my sleeve skeins. And obviously this is not gonna be an enormous sweater, maybe like a top. My fingering weight yarn that I spin tends to border sport weight. So I was even thinking of like a James N. Watts top, something like that, you know? Like the sleeve yarns are different. They do look slightly different. One of them's lighter, one of them's darker. I don't particularly care. That doesn't like really bother me. But it's just that these colors like did whatever they wanted to do. I think this looks very like Yarn Hero. If you're familiar with that brand, they also sell at Rhinebeck. But I like all the weird like color blends that I got. There's like a lot of purple in the sleeves, a lot more green. Overall, like I really like these purple sections. The entire spin looks sort of like a berry color, kind of pink, kind of purple. I think if I held this with mohair, I could definitely force it to lean one direction or the other. But honestly, I don't know if I want to give up all the like hand spun qualities of this. So anyway, this was a 2-ply. Each braid was 1 ply. Does that sound right? Honestly, I don't even remember how I broke this up. I remember I divided the whole thing in half. The first half of that split was for the main body, and then I divided that into 2 plies, and then the second half was for the sleeves, and I divided that into 4 plies. Honestly, I had like plastic bags everywhere, and plastic bags said sleeve 1 and sleeve 2 and body ply 1, and it was a kind of a disaster while I was doing it, but it all worked out. It's all fine, it's all good. And then, like I said, at the very end, I had this tiny little baby nubbin of yarn left. I like picking up stitches on a neckline, working them upwards, and then doing sort of a firm bind off. I don't really like opened like stretchy necks on hand knit sweaters. Just knowing that I've been doing that a lot on sweaters I've made for myself in the past, I was like, whatever, if I use this for that, that's cool. If not, it is what it is. Again, I'm gonna put them here. I definitely have photos of this while I was spinning it, so I will have put them all up on the screen by now. This was fun. I'm glad I did this early in Tour de Fleece. It definitely got me thinking a lot about color changes and just how wild this stuff can get, and it's really muted. And I don't hate that, but I don't like love it either. So I had this in mind across my whole Tour de Fleece journey. It's here, it's done, it's cute. It's cute. The yardage for the body on the sweater spin was 912 yards. I got really, really close with my yardage on both sleeves. I actually ended up, after plying, after everything was said and done, for the first sleeve I got 240 yards, and for the second sleeve I got 244 yards. So I was very impressed with how evenly that worked up. And then the last tiny little booby spin was 46 yards for the neckline. So that should be plenty. After I was done spinning that, I had spun all of those. I got them all washed. They were all good to go. Everything was cool. Like I said, I was thinking about color and how that not like bamboozled me, but I did feel like a little surprised. And again, like we are leveling up on the spinning front. I decided to learn how to chain ply to try to control the way these like color stories were happening and how they're appearing in the finished yarn. So my next spin on my list is my first little chain ply test. So here he is, very small. And it's funny how this yarn turned out. This is the exact same fiber. It was just the leftovers of the leftovers. Same fiber, everything, compared to, let me just grab the main one. So all right, so this is the 2-ply of the same fiber on itself. This is that same fiber chain plied. So now, with all my context and knowledge and hindsight is 2020, would I have loved this spin done on a chain ply? Yes, probably a lot more actually. I found a really incredible blog post. I haven't been on a blog since like 2012, but I found this blog post that talked about why some fibers spin up muddy and other ones don't, what you can do to control that, and how the different techniques like affect the finished spin and everything. I will put a link to that down below. As I'm sitting here talking about it, I honestly cannot remember any of the name of the blog post or anything, but I shared it with my friends and we all found it very helpful. If you are even remotely interested in like color control or anything like that, I would take a look at it. But overall, this just looks so much brighter, more vibrant. If you know anything about chain plying, the pro of chain plying is that you only need one strand, or one ply, I guess I should say, and then it's a technique to 3-ply the yarn on itself. And because you're plying it on itself, you get to preserve those color changes, and they're not spread across the whole skein and then muted down with a second or a third ply. I, like, for the life of me, cannot remember if I've ever done chain plying. My heart tells me that I haven't, but it also seems really unlikely that I've never tried chain plying. Up to this point, it came out great. Honestly, big fan of chain plying. I'm totally converted. I think a lot of this stuff like has its place, but chain plying, just for the type of fiber that I like to buy, seems to have worked out well. And I have a ton more examples, but this was my first spin. I have like a weird vision for a big project with all my little bits and bobs and pieces and everything from Tour de Fleece, and I'll talk about that at the end. So I got this bee in my bonnet about chain plying. I also wanted to burn through some stash that was kind of like plaguing me, like what do I do with this? I can't picture it as a finished yarn, Well, the chain plying unlocked this whole new area for me. So I spun up this yarn and then chain plied it, and this was from my stash from like when I first got a spinning wheel many years ago. So I definitely have a picture of this. I sent it in the group chat, I know for sure. So here is the yarn, and then I will put the photo next to it of what it looks like as fiber. This was like the coolest, weirdest, spacey fiber. I'm so glad that I waited to chain ply it because these color repeats, I think these would have looked terrible, honestly, in a 2-ply. They came out really nice. It looks like the carpet in a bowling alley, which is cool. I have very little information about what type of yarn this is, other than it said 100% wool. Sock and I have discovered this year that 100% wool can really just mean any old thing if there's not a specific breed listed on it. So this is very scratchy. I have absolutely no idea like what it could become. I don't know. It does look cute. Now, I just dyed my hair like not that long ago. We'll see. We'll see where any of these end up really, but this one is just like totally wacky and fun and super cute. Next up on my 3-plying journey, I wanted to do a traditional 3-ply, not a chain ply, but a traditional 3-ply where I make 3 separate plies and then spin them all together. I was still on the pursuit of like finding fun colors and how colors work together and everything. So this was one of the leftovers of one of the plies of the 3-ply that I will show you here in just a second. But this was a bat from my stash, and I don't really like buy bats anymore. I'm definitely more of a fiber braid kind of lady. I tend to spin everything into a fingering weight or a sock weight, like very fine, and I just can't get stoked about like fighting with a bat with all the like blips and flips and textures and all that stuff. So I was fighting for my life, just trying to get these out of my stash, which is fine. They make for some cute, tiny little chain plied samples. I'm really glad that I did the chain plying venture at the beginning of Tour de Fleece, just to use up all these little like nubs and everything. It was very satisfying. This one ended up being 72 yards of yarn just for this little guy. And then he contributed to the larger 3-ply yarn, which is this right here. And we're back to like the muted colors. I actually made a reel of this, and I'll put the little video up beside it so you can see how all the plies came together to make this. It's really pretty. This one was 2 bats and a mini braid. The 2 bats I actually have had in my stash for, like I said, years and years. And then the third ply was a mini braid that I got. It was by the Fiber Genie, and I got it from the Moon and Yarn craft room pretty recently. But these were all like cool tones. You can see the strands of purple and blue were pretty much from the same bat. And then all of the green in here was from the mini braid. I really like a 3-ply. I think I would absolutely love a sweater or a cardigan or something out of a 3-ply. This uses so much fiber though, like so much fiber. It would definitely be like an investment, maybe a cardigan or a sweater that I've already knit before, something that I wouldn't try a new pattern on. But I feel like a whole hand spun sweater out of 3-ply would be just very nice, very nice. And you can see from back here, it kind of reads this like a teal. There's a little bit of variegation to it. It's pretty cool. Honestly, just for like digging in my stash and pulling out a bunch of like random stuff that had no business going together, it turned out pretty cute. So this ended up being 600 yards of yarn, and just again, like for the sake of explanation, that means that this finished skein was 200 yards. 3 plies, all of those together were 600 yards. Then when you spin them together on themselves, they go back down to that 200. I would say for my 3-ply, my traditional 3-ply, this is my first on Tour de Fleece. This came out to be like between a DK and a worsted. I haven't figured out any like magical way to make a fingering weight yarn with the 3-ply, the traditional 3-ply. Not too bad. Little chunkier than I normally do. On that note, as I say, I haven't figured out how to do that. My next spin is another chain ply. This one was not done with leftovers. This one was actually done as a test. I bought a bunch of fiber. I will put a link to the shop that I bought from Etsy in the description box below, but I bought a bunch of fiber that was blended fiber. This skein in particular was a Merino nylon blend, and I've had like a strong desire to make a pair of hand spun socks for a long time, but I am not a fool and I would not even waste my time knitting socks if there's no nylon content in the yarn. So I found a Merino nylon blend on Etsy. It was very inexpensive and it was on sale. This was, I think I got 6 ounces of it. I'm not even gonna speculate how much it cost. It was on sale. I think this shop runs sales pretty frequently because I keep getting emails about it now. But all that to say, it will be in the description box if you're interested in getting some Merino nylon yarn. This was the actual finished spin. So this is my little test just to see if I could get yarn thin enough that when I chain plied it together, it still ended up being mostly fingering or sport weight. Since these are gonna be socks, they do kind of have to become like pretty accurate in the finished knit. So I tried to make it as thin as possible. I do think it worked out. I think it's pretty. It's just some like hot pink yarn. I think they called this like raspberry something or other, or I don't know. But just some hot pink yarn, Merino nylon blend. This was not fun to spin, and I don't think, unless these socks are gonna like really wow me in some way, I don't think I would do this again, but it was nice to try it. The actual thinness of the ply that it takes to end up with a fingering weight chain plied yarn is just so fine that, like, for me personally, I don't think it's that fun to spin, and I don't think it's that fun to chain ply. I definitely thought that spinning one color yarn was gonna get very, very boring, and it didn't. Like, I just wasn't bored while I was making this. It truly was like the way that it felt like in your hands. The whole thing felt like very fragile. It was not as intuitive as some of like my other spins or anything like that. So don't know if I'll do this again, but it was a nice try. And at least it was inexpensive for the most part. So the little test mini was 51 yards, and then the actual main spin for my socks was 750 yards. So I ended up getting 250 yards of the glitter sock yarn. I had planned, like, just from the start, contrast heels and toes. So even though that's not like a full skein of sock yarn, this is still more of a test, so we'll see how those actually knit up. But I at least got 250 yards. That'll make a nice pair of like ankle socks or something like that. My next skein was also a chain ply. I basically just wanted to take a break from doing these like planned sort of intentional spins and do something like just super fun, where it didn't matter how the finished product turned out. I have no idea where this fiber came from in my stash, like literally no clue at all. I had this, it was red and white, really splotchy. There were little blips of gray, you can see here like towards the top. I have no idea where this fiber came from. I do think it's some sort of merino. It's very soft. It was like super fun to spin and very simple and easy. And it was about half of a braid, maybe. I don't know if I had like dissected this fiber braid at some point and like worked with the other half. I don't really know what this came from or where it was, but it was in the bottom of my fiber braid stash, and I was like, well, I might as well spin it with my new chain plying skills. This ended up being 297 yards of yarn that I had spun up. I could see this being like a bandana or something, maybe like some color work. I don't know. Turned out to be a nice weight. I would say this is like probably closer to a sport weight, but it's very sturdy. There's not a lot of like halo or fuzzies coming off of it, which was a nice change of pace. That was sort of a test, sort of not. Okay, I'm looking at my pile of yarn. I'm looking at my notes. I have forgotten to write this down. So actually my total that I'm gonna give you at the end of the video is not accurate. I have more than that, but this is just the little guy. I don't know what my deal is This was the other ply. Oh my God. This was the other ply that I spun with the rose fiber. So this was also some kind of plant fiber. I cannot remember. None of these had tags. I really have like not been in my spinning stash for a really long time. But you can see there's some like almost green, brown, purple, blue in here. It has a ton of drape. It's very, very like floppy in a good way. Yeah, so this was some sort of plant fiber. I cannot remember what it was or what it is. I did not write down the yardage for this, but I had this left over on a bobbin and I think it had like fallen to the back or something. I don't know what happened, but I like basically forgot about it. And then by the time I remembered, I was like, oh yeah, I know how to chain ply now. I should just use up that last little bit. So this would also make a super cute bandana. I don't know. This is the forgotten son, I guess, of the video. I was looking at my list and I was like, My very last spin is absolutely enormous. I already have plans for this. This was a real test of my chain plying. So I will show you. The yarn is here. Please ignore the fact that it's in this huge like yarn baby. I just didn't feel like splitting it up into multiple hanks, so I actually like wound it all together like this on the Nitty Naughty. I have this and then another portion of it over there by my spinning wheel. That other portion does not count towards Tour de Fleece because I just like could not get my life together to finish this up. I had 12 ounces of this. Was it 12 ounces? I'm pretty sure I had 2 6-ounce yeah, I had 2 6-ounce braids for sure. Also from the shop that I got the Marino nylon sock blend fiber with, and this was a blended fiber. So I'll hold this here so that I can put the photo on the screen of what it looked like before I spun it. If you guys have spun with this fiber before, you know that like the blended fibers are very inexpensive, which is great, but you pretty much can only chain ply it unless you want it to look like a muddy disaster. And I say that from experience because I did that pretty recently. I think this turned out so beautifully. I actually spun this from the fold. So if you spin from the fold, you are able to create those longer stretches of uninterrupted like color patterning. And then when you chain ply it, you're able to apply those colors onto themselves, which gives you like the more vibrant look as opposed to like something more like muddied together. But this turned out so pretty. It's definitely muted in some spots. The spinning from the fold was a little more challenging than I initially anticipated. It's just not as, like I said, intuitive. I'm a total like short forward draw kind of gal, and you just can't really do that effectively when you spin from the fold, but the finished product seems worth it. I have even more, like I said, yardage over there that I haven't washed yet. This is going to become a traveler shawl for Brienne. I sent pictures of this in the group chat. I was like live tweeting everybody during Tour de Fleece, and Brienne said, oh my God, in all big capital letters, that would be so beautiful. That would be such a beautiful shawl. And I said, that's perfect because I don't know what to do with this now. So I actually ended up spinning just in this portion, 1,530 yards. So this is 510 yards. It ended up becoming like a DK worsted, which is about what I expected for like a 3-ply. And then I have another finished 100 yards over there on the Nitty Naughty that still needs washed. So I have probably like close to like 20, 30, 40 yards of this. So I have to actually look and see if I can make the cowl or the shawl. If I can make the shawl, I'm just gonna go for it. But yeah, this was a lot of fun. Mostly in the plying. I don't think like spinning the actual plies was that fun. I don't know if I would buy this type of blended yarn or this type of blended fiber again, but it was cool, you know? I like it. It's nice. I think it's gonna make a really pretty shawl. So that is allegedly everything. Like I said, I just found that other skein that I didn't count. So this number I'm about to give you is not accurate for how many yards of yarn I brought into this world over Tour de Fleece. I have in my notes that my total yardage count was 5,751 yards, maybe closer to like 5,800, I don't know. Honestly, for my first Tour de Fleece, I feel pretty proud of that. I feel like happy about it. I got so much stuff out of my stash. That was great. I feel freshly liberated. I am so happy that I finally figured out chain plying. I'm happy I like found that weird blog. There's so much more information on that blog outside of that specific article that I would link below. If you are interested in spinning and like I said, the color and fiber preparation and everything, there's just like a ton of really good info out there on that blog specifically. That's all my spinning. That's everything I did on Tour de Fleece. I am gonna offer up a good bit of this to my friends and see if anyone wants anything. With all of my tiny little test gains and mini spins and everything like that, I really want to try to make the granny square hoodie. That was featured at the end of my 25 free granny stitch crochet patterns video that I posted maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, something like that. But just the more I look at it, the more it looks like a super comfy, I don't know what this actual thing is called, but I had one of these weird hoodies in high school and I'll put a picture of it here, and it reminds me of that. And I would love to have something to just like throw on around the house that is like very not precious and like super scrappy. I have a lot of hand spun from like years past that I probably should get rid of. And it seems like a worthy cause to commit it to that. So that's kind of my plan with like the smaller portions of yarn here. And then of course I have my sweater spin. I don't know what's gonna happen to that. The more I look at it, the more I don't like it. It was really fun to make something different, but we'll see. We'll see how this all goes. The next episode, episode 21, will be like a regular standard show and tell podcast. It feels like a hot minute since I've done that. I guess I'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you on the next one. Bye.